So welcome everyone to our Ask Me Anything series. My name is Shannon McCardle. I am the Director of Events at Sports Innovation Lab. We're thrilled to have our guest today is John Coombs, CEO and co-founder of Rover. We're going to talk about how he's helping sports properties move forward with mobile engagement. And I'll get into his formal introduction in just a moment. But just a few things for those of you that haven't attended an Ask Me Anything series before. We kicked this off back in March. When really we wanted to create a channel of access to leaders in the industry that were taking risks and taking action. And our goal was to garner perspectives from across the industry, from players to operators, from teams to leagues, and we've done just that. So just to give you an example of the past guests that we've had on our AMA series, here is a list of their logos. We've had everyone from an NBA star, we've had Olympians, we've had executives from Octagon and Clear, Spartan Race, Drone Racing League. If you have not been able to see these Ask Me Anythings, we have them all posted on our website, and I'll make sure to share that link with you after the call, after I finish up the introduction. So just a couple things I want to cover. As you know, you've heard me mention this before, but we have a successful Slack community that we've built, well over 1,000 people. I highly encourage you, if you haven't already joined, to please join. We have close to, I'd say, over 1,100 people at this point. It's a great place to network, meet new people, share ideas. So please make sure to sign up for that, and I will make sure you have that link. Next week, we're excited to have Amy Huckhausen join us. She is the Commissioner of America East Conference. She'll be joining us next Thursday, June 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'll make sure you have that link to register as well. So just a few points. As you all know, as I just mentioned, we record all of these. So they're all posted on our website. So we ask that you please remain on mute, but we do want to hear from you. So we want your questions. So please use the chat function, easy at the bottom of your screen. You just click right on that. It opens up a window. You'll be able to write your questions right in there. You can share them either with everyone, or you can send them directly to myself or Josh Walker, who will be hosting this conversation. So many of you know Josh. He is the president and co-founder of the Sports Innovation Lab. He came from Forrester, where he worked as a VP of research, and he currently stewards our research program here at Sports Innovation Lab. He is credited with introducing the world to the concept of the fluid fan. I'm sure you've heard his name or heard his voice recently, as he's been featured in many publications and on many podcasts. And now for our guest, as I said, John Coombs, co-founder and CEO of Rover. Rover helps sports teams and app publishers create engaging mobile campaigns and branded fan experiences that drive revenue. Rover powers mobile fan experiences for more than 65 teams and leagues in the NFL, NBA, NHL, and other leagues around the world. So John, thanks so much for being here. And with that, I'll pass it over to Josh.
All right, thanks, Shanna, and thank you, John, for joining us. We're going to get started right away by getting you guys involved, because we want to know actually what your experience with team apps has been. So before we even let John say a word, I would love for you guys to answer the question that I just put up, which is, do you have an official team app on your phone? John's company, Rover, is specialist in this area. There's a lot of first generation apps that are out there. A lot of teams rushed into the idea that they needed to have their own mobile app back in the late 90s, even 2000s. And the technology's come a long way. And John's going to share a lot of the innovation that he's done and that his competitors are doing in this space to improve that experience. But I wanted to get a pretty good sense of where you guys all stood on this. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds to answer. And then I'm going to share the results with everybody. But while they're doing that, John, why don't you quickly tell everybody what your business was doing before COVID, and then maybe just touch a little bit on how things have changed over the last 3 months.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if I'm just kind of like introduce sort of what it is that we do a little bit, it's really, we operate on this sort of belief, and this poll question is well aligned with that the app is very valuable for a sports team, for a lot of businesses and brands. And one of the challenges with the app ecosystem is it's highly dependent on engineering talent and developer resources. So really what we do is provide a platform that makes the experience that a team delivers to their fan through their app a lot more lightweight and easier to integrate their partners and create fan experiences around. I think, pre-COVID, depending on what market you look in, there was an increase, certainly in the last few years, of the value and the role that the app can play in the sort of business of sports. But I think post or through COVID, generally that's definitely been accelerated as, sort of pragmatically speaking, as, physical world inventory from a sponsorship perspective was put on pause. And there was a recognition that I need to connect with the fan in a digital context. And it really sort of put a lot more emphasis on, having the opportunity to do that. And the app is certainly one of the more powerful tools in the tool belt or the platform ecosystem to enable that. And I think going back to the earlier point, COVID has accelerated that recognition.
So you got an audience that's about 60-40. 60% have a team app and 40% do not. Does that jive with your general experience of like knowing what happens when people come to a venue?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it certainly it starts with what sport you follow. So, I mean, if you follow Major League Baseball as your primary, sport of interest, there are no team apps. So the channel through which you would engage in a mobile aspect would be through, the league app. Obviously, NFL, NBA, and to some degree NHL has those team apps. And I think, when you look at it, it's like any platform. I mean, some embrace Twitter, some embrace Instagram. It's not a platform for all, but it certainly has sort of proven to be a platform for the diehards in a lot of ways. And we recognize that, and I think teams recognize that. No channel really is 100% penetration, but it's certainly a compelling one with a ratio that I would have roughly expected.
So you just mentioned that the app is primarily for the diehard, and you drink some of the Kool-Aid we serve at the Sports Innovation Lab around the fluid fan and how these fans now are less sometimes diehard and more just looking for a night out and having a social experience and things like that. What I'm wondering is who at the team, right? Because that's primarily your customer. Is that fair to say? The individual sports teams, they're the ones who are calling up Rover, trying to engage you guys, building an experience on your platform.
Yeah.
You do some stuff for brands, but it really is the team to the brand that's really your channel to building that level of engagement with the fan.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So if that's the way you sell and deliver solutions into the marketplace, who at the team is thinking, man, we need to talk to John and his team? Like give the listeners a sense of like, who's your primary customer and what's their motivation for even engaging in some of this development?
Yeah. So, I think in terms of who the persona is and who it is at a club that we're most directly engaged with, it certainly falls under the marketing or digital bucket. And I think there's two or three key, underlying organizational objectives that sort of decide, that decision. I think one, we can start with sponsorship and commercial opportunities. As you look at the limits, just due to physical space of how partners can be activated and how sponsorship can take place in a venue, it becomes clear that there's green space and new inventory opportunities digitally and specifically in mobile. Also, unlike sort of the physical activation, there's a data centricity to what you can do in a mobile ecosystem. So sponsorship is definitely a kind of a key pillar and driver of this. If I have an audience on mobile and I'm providing utility and value to that fan, how am I also integrating my partners? And are there net new sponsorship opportunities I can create that either are just provide greater visibility for a partner, or further to that are unique to what the app can provide? How can I, take what the benefits of an app can do and apply it to an activation I'm working on?
So I'm a super skeptic, right? So
yep.
I'm just like, this usually starts because somebody in the organization goes, look, we need more stuff to sell.
Right.
We don't have a mobile app. We could sell more sponsorship. We could, wheel this thing out into the marketplace. We can make a big deal about it. Let's go build an app. Yep. Versus somebody sitting there going, you know what? Our fan experience would be so much better if we did this thing. I mean, in reality, it's usually A, not B, right?
Absolutely. I think that's why the early days of mobile monetization, whether it's sports or otherwise, were really driven by programmatic advertising, banner ads, displays, and interstitials, which to your point are, pretty significantly disruptive to the user experience. We all don't view like that pop-up ad when we open the weather app as a enhancement to how we engage to check the weather. And I think if you look at that as the primary means to monetize, absolutely, it's arguably short-sighted, and it's impression based, and you're just trying to put as many ad units in front of everyone as possible, to arguably the detriment of that fan or user experience. I think, when you think about monetization, you have to think fan first, user first, which is how do we enhance experience while also integrating a partner in that respect. And I could give an example of that.
I want you to, because I think that,
Yeah.
that you probably have to do some sort of mental jiu-jitsu on your customer who's just like, I want ads here, I want their logo here, I want this thing to look like this. And the reality is, if you build something like that, nobody's going to use it. And there's been plenty of, dead apps out there, and we can talk about the idea that some apps need to be downloaded, your apps don't. So like, how do we deal with that as well? So why don't you touch on that? Why don't you touch on the idea here, especially that if the sponsorship team's driving this and it's not really driven by fan experience, how your team tries to bridge that gap, either from a technology perspective, a design perspective, or just a communications process?
Yeah. So, to sort of, when you kind of look at our product, you can almost look at it as you've got a car and the car is the app. And then there are things you would place in it to enhance the performance of that vehicle. That's really what Rover is. It's an add-on to the app ecosystem. There's a lot of complex challenges and things that need to happen to build an app. And our goal and focus has always been to pick a lane that we believe is extremely important and creates value. And be an add-on that goes really deep and focused in that lane. That lane being engagement, usage, fan experience, right? And so that's really what we're doing. And then when you think about the question around how do we sort of not monetize at the expense of the fan, it's really about that mindset of thinking first, fan first. How do we enhance the fan experience? And then asking that question, how does that create a revenue opportunity? So some of the best activations start with no branding, no partner integration.
Cherry pick one. Cherry pick one you've done. Get real specific. Like where have you done this really well?
So one of the most successful ones we've seen in the last few years, there are many, but one that stands out to me is sort of the notion of like a scavenger hunt. Okay, so one of the things that partners want, of course, is foot traffic. Of course, a brand experience that fans enjoy. But one of the things fans want to do is, of course, feel like they're engaged or involved in something. They're participatory in their fan experience. And also this idea that the fan experience isn't exclusive to within the walls of the venue. So just to kind of walk you through the sort of this concept of a scavenger hunt. So we've done this with many clubs. Essentially, with Rover's technology, a fan can tap their phone or scan a QR code at various points throughout the community, right? Basically, and when they do that, content will show up in the club app that speaks to what they're engaging with. So we did something with, the San Jose Sharks, for example, and we've done it with many other teams where in the case of the Sharks, they hid like 150, 200 pucks around the Bay Area. With prizing associated with that. So finding pucks was entries into contests for tickets, had a partner and a sponsor associated with it. There were clues, there were hints, but we were really bridging the physical and digital divide, which is physically the fan is going out into the community, foot traffic, traveling, going into partner locations, but then participating in that fan experience by, finding a puck, getting a contest entry.
And what was the time period for this, John? Did you do this?
This
over
was about
just
about a week, a few days kind of thing. It was kind of a blitz leading up to the season. Obviously what it's doing is it's getting people out of the community, getting them into partner locations, but there's also an element of fun and sort of discovery, finding the Willy Wonka golden ticket, as it were. Performed super well, highly engaging. I think all the feedback in the post activation research that was done suggested that I don't think any fan really viewed it as a sponsorship piece. They viewed it as an engagement with their club and in their community that also happened to have branding tied to it.
And just real quickly, was that successful in getting new people to start using the app? And did you see retention from that event?
It was in the case of, we did a case study on it. In the case of another club that did it, they drove a 10% increase in app downloads, which is, when you think about install base, and that's really, really impressive, because the app was required in that case to participate. So that was the first piece. And then secondly, what you're starting to do, which is crucial to retention, is demonstrate that by having the app, you have unique access to the club. You have unique ways in which you can participate that other platforms can't afford. I can't take my laptop around the community and try and do some kind of scavenger hunt, right? It doesn't work that way. So it's really that recognition that what's unique to the technology that exists within an app, and what opportunities does that present us to create, better ways to have an interaction with the fan base.
So I'm going to use your opportunity here to talk about the functionality that our listeners expect to get from a mobile experience. I'm going to split this up. I'm going to sort of give you guys the opportunity to answer this question in venue. Then I'm going to close this poll, and then I'm going to ask you outside the venue. So this one is first about when you're in the venue and you've got a team app on your phone, and I know that a number of you don't, but now think about having one. Would you want it to make your life easier? Would you like it to unlock, upgrades and special access to the players, behind the scenes stuff, things that you normally couldn't buy? Would you rather it just make viewing the game better, right? Instant replays, media stuff, or would you like it to make it more social? For you to discover other people that are at the game, maybe allow you to put your picture up on the Jumbotron, take home some Instagrammable moments. Or the final question is in-game betting, which is becoming more and more popular in terms of a mobile experience, having something in your hand where you can do prop betting or just game with the right fans that are in the stadium. So I'm gonna give you guys a few more minutes. John, do you want to try to color the results here by giving us your perspective? What's your priority on those? I mean, they're all important, but if the fan's in the venue and you're consulting with the team, how do you walk them through doing one of these well versus trying to do all of them?
Yeah, I think, utility is always very compelling and powerful. So when you think mobile ticketing and the ability to access the venue, seamlessly from a club app, for example, there it is, convenience, right? Utility is less flashy, but it's always extremely powerful and compelling when it comes to why a fan would give you the precious real estate on their phone. So access, building access, in-seat ordering, navigation, those things are compelling utilitarian pieces of the app. I think beyond that, you start to look at other use cases that can enhance that, because if something is purely utility, there might be a less of a sort of a compelling use to use it frequently. If it's just get me in, get me out, and it's done, that's a little different. But utility is definitely a key driver of app downloads and usage in a venue.
And one of the things I know is true, because I know your business well enough. You're about as much outside the venue as you are inside the venue, because you're helping the fan experience the team's content and the community and get access to players and unique content year round, right? The concept is that they're there to enjoy that all. So I want to launch a second poll, which is really about the same question, but outside the venue, and see if the convenience factor goes down, because now I don't need to park, find my seat and things like that, but I might want to buy tickets. I might want to buy merchandise. So convenience still does matter to me. But the idea of surprise and delight when the season's not going on, do you do a lot of work outside of the season to keep people engaged? Talk a little bit about sort of like the before, during, and after time slot, if you will, and your app. And I know
there's
it's
so much.
not your app, but it's like the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
kind of like,
yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, and it's a really interesting topic that I think is particularly relevant now. You know, one way to kind of look at that is if I have 20,000 or 50,000 people in my venue, how many fans are watching or engage with the club to some degree outside of the venue, and almost exclusively or often that is a far more sizable number than those who are there. So that then the question becomes, what should the experience and what do the opportunities look like for that very sizable group of fans outside of the venue? And there's certainly a big discussion, I think, to kind of explore there. The other thing is, this idea that if the fan experience is changing in terms of how we consume, and there's a pretty embraced notion of this sort of concept of the second screen, and fans aren't just watching on TV, as you guys have done a lot of research on. What's the role? Does the club play a role in facilitating that second screen? Should my second screen be ESPN or some other third-party sports app, or potentially can the club play a role in being that second screen? And if so, what does that look like?
It's such a fascinating concept because of the digital rights and the way that media companies sell those rights. The primary answer there, if you saw the poll results, was that that's where they want. Now they're outside the venue. They want the mobile experience to be about content, media, replays, stats, things like that. Sometimes you, as the app provider, probably don't have rights to a lot of that footage. There's probably a window of time where you're not allowed to display, highlights, things like that. How deep do you get into that? How deep do you get into like knowing what rights you have available to you, what the team owns, what brands can display that, how that works?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think perhaps one answer to that question is really exemplified by what you're doing in this Zoom call right now, which is it's participatory. You're doing polls in real time as we're talking. That's something that we do. So I don't need to try and compete against, the broadcast rights and the real-time video content. I can engage the audience with questions or information that augments that isn't reliant on content inventory I may not have rights to. And I think that also opens up a nugget that you and I and a lot of folks at Sports Innovation Lab have talked about, which is very interesting, which is this idea of that, there's obviously fluid fan, but beyond that, there's also this participatory element. What does that look like? How can I feel like it's less of a download content dump and more of something where I'm engaged to some degree? And that's an area I think that we're just scratching the surface on. But is closer to what the second screen experience likely is than just having a different angle of video or replays.
I think it's highly relevant for this period of time. We had Mihir on here talking about co-viewing and watch parties. We've been thinking a lot about the idea that you can have interactivity sitting next to a live video stream. If we think about this, and again, second screen to me is the wrong way to think about it, because then it's not connected in any way to the first screen, but it is a second screen if it's in my hand and I'm doing something differently than I'm doing when I'm watching. How much do you have to understand the broadcast world to do something that's really relevant and contextual and participatory at Rover so that you're doing that in the moment? And if you say, not a lot, Josh, because in the game, we expect them to be paying attention to the game. They're not on our app, blah, blah, blah. But I do think that that is a very popular and common behavior for somebody to pick this thing up while they're watching that thing and go, oh, I'm going to check this out. Do you have to really think about like the real-time nature of what you do?
So, depending on the team, I think obviously a lot of clubs are staffed and pretty good at creative and content execution as the game's going on, especially
their social teams are pumping stuff out, things like that.
Yeah, it's like a Wall Street trade desk, right? If you look at some of these digital rooms, many screens, and they're used to Twitter and Instagram and social content publishing in real time. And so you're kind of piggybacking or building on that conceptual foundation of a real-time, digital piece. I think, to date, it has primarily been social because social is a very flexible place to push content in a more real-time place. Traditionally, aside from score updates and things like that, the app ecosystem has not afforded the same flexibility. If you wanted to change a user experience or do something that is real-time reflective, forget about it doing it in real time. You're getting engineers involved and app updates and doing all that. That's really kind of where our value prop comes in, is it makes the app less of a sort of rigid thing that we build in advance of the season, set it and forget it, aside from a few push notifications. It now makes it a more sort of nimble, creative platform where the team can express a voice and a content strategy they've been doing on social, but adapt it to the app ecosystem.
So I want you to touch on that, because it's one of the key differences about your company and the way other app companies deploy their stuff. And one of the key questions here, and again, this isn't Ask Me Anything, so I try to set the stage early, but this is the audience's forum. So you're going to have a bunch of questions coming in now, I think. One of the first questions I got is keen to understand how your platform is different from the long-established players like InScam. InScam's not the only one. BAM's out there. There's lots of VenueNext and VenueTime, all these different companies that provide apps in the venue. How would you say the key differentiation is there?
Really good and important question. The quick answer is that we don't build apps. And these other companies,
people will be confused by that statement based on our last half hour of conversation. So definitely clarify that.
Yeah. So if you think, to avoid getting too technical, when an app is built, there's many component parts similar to that concept of like a car. There's lots going on. Ford doesn't build every part within the car, of course, right? And so it's a similar concept. What we do is essentially, you'd look at it as an add-on that goes inside the app. Okay, so you have your app, regardless of the provider. You're basically just putting in an add-on, and that add-on is Rover. And what it does is it allows you to sit in a CMS, or like a command center, as it were, and start to create things that can be delivered in the app. Okay, so by using Rover, you're able to start to change your InScam or your Adept or whatever app provider you use. You're able to start to create activations and campaigns like that without having to update the app. And really, when you're talking about differentiation, I mean, our goal is to never build apps. Our goal is to help enhance the value of those apps. Right. So I would say
let me help you be very specific here, because it's like, I currently pay InScam to build my app. I come up with a really creative idea for Friday night's game. What do I need to do?
Well, if you're using us, you would just
log into. So I mean,
the pain point is that app development is a engineering intensive process. So I have to
then has to go into the app store, get approved.
It goes into the app store. It's the time horizon to delivery is longer. The resources required to execute, the cost required to execute. If anyone's familiar with like email marketing solutions, like you take a MailChimp, I can go into MailChimp and I can quickly drag and drop some images, target who I want to put my campaign to. And I've done that without any technical people in 5 minutes. Yeah. There's a similar theme there. I'm not writing like, HTML code to make my email pretty. It's a drag and drop, and I can own my content strategy without a dependency on app developer. And by no means is that replacing the role of the app developer. The app developer is crucial, but they should be working on the complex problems like making sure ticketing works, making sure the single sign-on works, making sure the league feeds are accurate and such. And one-off promotional engagement things, it doesn't make sense to build those, for one game or for one day. Then they'd be throwaway.
So Bill asks, people love to have personalized experience in their apps. Is it easy for you to work with teams to ensure a personalized feel for users? And are the apps and activations geared to a wider fan base? So let's just start with the first part, and then I'll try to interpret the second part. And Bill, if you want to clarify the second part, I'll ask it again, but definitely touch on the personalization piece.
Yeah, it's important because it goes back to the question of why does the app matter? So obviously Twitter on social, broad reach, really good, impressions and reach, far less so on targeting and personalization. That is the benefit of the app. What it lacks in, global reach, it gains in ability to personalize because it's a data-centric owned asset. So what that means is, for example, like we have an integration with Ticketmaster, which allows, clubs that use our product to send campaigns and activations based on Arctics and ticketing data. So if you're a season ticket holder, I'm logged in my Rover account, I can deploy a campaign to that group. Special experience because you're coming to the game, information about renewal deadlines, these kind of objectives. And you can't do that on social, right? So the idea here is that in the app is a lot of data that continues to grow. And the application of, your segments and your understanding of the fan can be easily activated on in that environment. So I think, season ticket holder, non-season ticket holder, very compelling use case, opens the doors for things. There's other examples of how personalization can happen, but yeah, that's what's unique to the app. And I think why, a lot of clubs are investing in that aspect of the strategy.
And this might get a little wonky, so I'll try not to. If InScam is the platform and you guys are improving the app that InScam is built and deployed, are there users of that app that Rover doesn't see, or do you usually share the same authentication and user database so that you can push to? Is that on a case-by-case basis?
It could get technical, but essentially any user that has that app, we can target based on data that's had. So it's not a siloed system.
Okay. And Anna from Breezy is here, fellow Toronto. What do you guys call yourselves in Toronto? I should know this. Is it just like it's like a
Torontonians.
Torontonians. I should add that to my vocabulary. Can you share a sense of the team app usage trends in the last couple of years? Are they going up? Are they going down? Is this becoming a more successful strategy for these teams? And then what are the success metrics for good engagement when you launch a feature in the app?
Yep. So first question, growth of the app audience. Absolutely. And almost, I would say 90% of our apps since, starting to work with a customer, install base and just total audience absolutely has grown. We saw a particularly aggressive spike in that, especially in the NFL and in some other leagues with the advent of mobile ticketing. Because essentially, yes, you could use a Ticketmaster app, but if you have the club app and that's your exclusive means to present a ticket, it did a lot for install bases, I would say. And then we talk about engagement metrics. These aren't exclusive to sport. They're kind of exist in the world of what app developers and app publishers are thinking about, which is beyond my install base, what's my engagement level as measured by monthly, daily active users, repeat visits. And then also, another prominent one in that vein is session time and what's the length of a user journey when I enter the app, similar to what you expect from like web metrics. Are people coming in, using their ticket and leaving, or are they coming in and really spending time in the app and engaging with the club and the activations and some of the content that they provide? So the goal when we do onboarding and we're talking app strategy, first we're interested in why do you have your app? Is this help me rank and understand the following three things. Is this about ticketing and venue experience, sponsorship and activation opportunities, data collection and personalization? From there, we can then start to say, okay, how do you measure those things? And what metrics matter to the organization? And then adapt a strategy that focuses on that. I mean, we work with sports teams that don't do anything at all with Rover on the sponsorship side. It's not even part of the picture. It's exclusively fan experience, information, those kind of things. Whereas others are heavily skewed towards, branding and integrating partners through most of what they do. So starting with what does this app mean to you and what's its goals helps adapt the strategy to that. And then a measurement plan can come into play.
Which of your customers does a particularly good job on this question about measuring or at least understanding what it is that they're trying to measure?
Yeah, I would start with sort of what I think about good measurement and what I'm hearing in the industry, and then apply it to a few different examples. I mean, I think having worked in technology and product for a while, One of the things that I really like is the sort of lifetime value and customer journey model of like e-commerce and other sort of technology companies, which is to say, if we look at the journey of any customer being a fan or, you know, Amazon Prime customer, what does that journey look like over the course of many years? And what are key indicators that we're going to sort of convert that user to premium or to spending more, increase their basket size in the language of e-commerce? I think that mindset of the lifetime value of the fan and opportunities to grow basket size from a revenue perspective is the right way to look at that. You know, of course, not at the expense of the experience, but you know, that's an important and sophisticated mindset that I see. And I think teams that have the data resources internally, and we do a lot to help on this front, to help to identify, you know, what is that fan journey and where are there opportunities to convert, is really crucial. You know, when you look at the composition of a lot of sports teams, yeah, we have tons of BI and analytics folks. Well, 90% of those folks are ticketing data, ticketing analytics, right? But increasingly, we're seeing more of those resources on the analytics side, looking beyond just the world of ticketing and starting to look at value and sort of revenue from fan beyond just the sort of, we sold you a ticket perspective. Those are indicators, I think, of like innovation or sort of sophistication in this. And I think a lot of clubs are doing it differently. But, you know, I don't want to, you know, there's tons of clubs that are doing it great, but I mean, recently I'm obviously the Minnesota Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons are really sophisticated on some of the things they're doing on the data side. And you see it in how they think long-term about the fan and the fan journey and what data.
Oh, I got you. And what data was when I saw you freeze, but we got the right answer. I mean, you have two clubs there. You definitely have the experience to know how to move them through these milestones and help them think about basket size. What impressed me about the Falcons was that they had a group there that cared about fan experience, but they weren't tied to just ticketing. They weren't tied to just merch, right? They were like the fan experience. So they cared about that entire journey, and they measured the entire journey in the way that you're discussing, which is there are definitely ways to progress a fan in their loyalty and their commitment and their attachment to our team. So let's make sure we're hitting these different points. It's not just an email campaign with certain conversion rates. They're thinking about this stuff in the right way.
The Falcons recently did a campaign, like I think a month ago, where essentially it's participatory in the sense of asking questions of fans to understand, you know, what game are you most excited about? What jersey do you like the most? You know, tell us about how we can enhance your experience. Well, and then taking those insights to better understand how they can refine the fan experience. And I think they do a really good job of that, creating a two-way dialogue to understand what matters to their customers the most, which helps them identify opportunity.
So Katrina's asking, is there a mechanism for Rover to create separate team lenses within the same app? She goes on to mention a number of teams. Is the idea that you could create one experience and then obviously have 3 different teams within that environment? Have you done that?
Yeah. So if you have one app, you might have, you know, a lot of clubs will have either a venue app that serves a number of teams, or a team app that might serve their like AHL team or their sort of secondary, you know, affiliate clubs. And that's I think that's important, because this idea of one ownership group having like, you know, 17 different apps is completely, you know, unmanageable. It's really about bringing your fan base into one place and then understanding what team they care the most about and following up on that. So yeah, I mean, that's again, something that happens with data is that we obviously know what club you're a fan of, and we can drill that down even further to know what specific aspects of that team you're interested in. And then that informs the segmentation strategy. So only fans of one club get this and another get that.
So let me, I want to just make sure I understand this. So it's the Timbers Corporate Management Group, right? 2 different teams, 3 different teams, they would come to you and build 3 different solutions, or there could be one solution that serviced all 3 of those?
The latter, one
The
solution
latter.
that serves all 3. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All
Or
right.
they could go with 3 unique ones, but.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I want to make sure we touch on another area that I think is becoming more and more important, especially with the concept of not being able to have fans in the stadium. It's the co-viewing, it's the shared media experience. How are the requests you're getting from your customers changing in the last 3 months versus what you saw before that?
Yep. So 2 things that are definitely important here. One has been, the sort of the not the scramble, but the sort of the need to create value for a partner absent of physical games has been definitely a big driver. And I kind of, it's being referred to as like make good type activations to help, I know, saying to a brand, I know you have this deal for in-venue signage or something like that, but we don't have that. So what can we do? So we've been spending a lot of time with corporate partnerships, sponsorship teams to look at, as well as digital, to say, how can we still create value in absence of the physical to make good and to enhance the partnerships that we have? I think that's been a very dominant theme throughout this time period. And then I guess the other one is thinking about, without contemporary content, what does our content strategy look like to maintain engagement? And one theme that's really, I think, been done well by a number of clubs, especially in the Premier League in the UK that we work with, has been to sort of capitalize on this pause or break to bring in historical themes, right? And leverage older content in a new, technology first way.
Can you build a virtual t-shirt cannon?
Working on that one.
Okay.
Working on that one. And we've actually been spending time with Elon Musk on that. We're thinking they might come from satellites.
The
from
t-shirts.
the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
T-shirts.
So are there any other topics that you want to make sure we touch on here? And audience, if there's any other questions, shoot them off now before I sort of wrap up with my final questions.
No, I think
I'm opening the door to you, John. Are there partners?
Yeah.
Is it like what are you looking for to improve your business over the next few months and years, so that you move out of this space of what I think has been disproportionately considered a nice to have, and really, be considering more of like core infrastructure for the sports entertainment business. And you might even want to touch on that too a little bit, because I would imagine most of your customers are part of entertainment groups that actually run esports and do concerts and have other sort of entertainment. Are you seeing demand from that side, right? Because that's the other thesis behind your company's entry point into sports, which is you're entering the venue and the team app space, and now that's turned into a multi-use entertainment environment. So your ability to do scavenger hunts that move people around to different partner locations is super critical to just familiarize a fan with the new TD Garden Arena or the new Raptors facility or whatever it is, right? So there's a huge strategic component to the physical foot traffic that you mentioned earlier. There's another whole thing, which is this whole idea of multimedia and media convergence, where entertainment, esports, live concerts, and sports all are happening in these same physical locations. Do your apps start to morph into more general purpose fan apps, or are they always going to start with the team and really go from there? So those are my big, when I think about your business, I think about those 2 driving factors that propel apps out of this, I'm going to ask, and answer a few survey questions. There's big strategic opportunities for the industry on both of those sides. Which one's more attractive to you? I mean, you can't do everything. So what drives your thinking?
I think like in any business, you got to be cautious of the nice to have only kind of mindset and really dig down to what kind of hard ROI can we provide and where we drive value. And to me, from a return on investment perspective, that really boils down to the sponsorship bucket and the data bucket, which is in part about feeding our understanding of the fan but also about enabling this personalized experience that many clubs want to deliver on. And I think that those are two key focus areas that will continue to evolve with our business in the years ahead, because they are really crucial, and they're also, you know, big green space where there's just a lot of opportunity. And to your point about sort of venues as mixed purpose, I mean, again, that boils down to a big part of our value proposition, which is, if I can change my app because Justin Timberlake's in town tomorrow and then gone the next day, and do so in a 15-minute lightweight way, where when somebody comes to the game or to the concert, I have a Justin Timberlake experience for that one day. That's a flexibility that's really crucial, because at the end of the day, a lot of, you know, if you have an app, you're inherently becoming you have a product team. You in part are a product company, and inherent in being good at product is ability to iterate, learn from errors, look at the data, and be relevant. And so when you marry what we do with your app, it really increases your flexibility, nimbleness, and ability to iterate and craft a better experience.
I think you couldn't have dropped the mic any better. All of these teams have become media companies and product companies. And that is like beyond just a broadcast product. That is now digital products. And when they decide to call you up because they need a sponsorship app to sell more stuff, they've made a conscious decision to now become a product company. That means they have to innovate on the product, they have to invest in the product, they have to think through the product experience, they have to try different types of displays and different types of content. And a lot of the teams aren't set up to do that. So that's where Rover comes in and adds that level of product thinking, product focus, product metrics. You know, to Anna's question earlier, measurement that empowers them to justify further investment in this stuff as we go down the path. So I think I touched on Wilson's last question, because he said, I would love to hear what's up next for Rover. And I think you just nailed it. It's personalization, it's data insights. John, I really appreciate you taking time doing this. Certainly it's a really important opportunity for a lot of the teams that had a few months to sort of start thinking about what they do and what they do differently coming out of this. And I think a lot of them are starting to realize that they are product companies. They're looking around, they're saying, we need different skills here, which is another thing that you and I have discussed. So I think you guys are going to need to be in a position to be a services company and a product company in the next few months, just to help people through this period of time.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Always a good conversation. Always some good challenging questions. So enjoyed joining you today.
I hope they weren't too challenging. Shanna, you're up.
Yes, let me just share my screen real quick. Just 2 quick reminders. Please don't forget to sign up. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Please don't forget to sign up for our Slack community. The link is right here. It's also in that chat window. And then, of course, next Thursday, June 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be joined by Amy Hechthausen, who is a Commissioner of America East. Amy is credited with increasing the conference's profile through progressive media partnerships, really forward-thinking and impressive commissioner, so it should be a great conversation.
Yeah, if you guys listened to my conversation with Val Ackerman, she attributed Amy as one of the younger thought leaders and innovators across college athletics and the NCAA. So please join us for that. She's no joke.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's all. So thank you to John, thank you to Josh, and thank you to all of you for attending, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
Bye, guys. Thank you.